Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a clinical look at diagnosing, building, and maintaining your personal boundaries so you can truly restore your emotional health and reclaim your agency. If you're someone who constantly feels drained by the demands of everyone else around you, or maybe you've just never quite been taught how to protect your own space, you are absolutely in the right place. I'm putting on my clinician's hat today to give you clear, professional, and warmly supportive advice for your own self-care and recovery. Our treatment plan for today follows 6 straightforward steps. 1. Diagnosing your needs. 2. Making empowering choices. 3. Reinforcing daily habits. 4. Assertive communication. 5. Handling manipulators. And 6. Long-term self-esteem. Okay, let's jump right in. Before we start building anything, we have to understand what a boundary actually is. Think of them as your emotional and physical property lines. They clearly define exactly where I begin and others end. But here is a really vital clinical distinction for you. Healthy boundaries are not these rigid, defensive stone walls designed to keep everyone out. No, it's much better to picture them as flexible, animated yellow fences. You have the total power to open the gate for the people and energies that actually serve you and then close it right back up when you need protection. So, let's talk about the symptoms of poor boundary strength. Are your fences a little too spongy? If you find yourself constantly absorbing other people's emotions to the point where you're just completely emotionally depleted, that's a huge red flag. You might find yourself locked in this people-pleasing stance, complying with demands simply out of guilt or maybe a fear of conflict. And this ultimately leads to enmeshment, which is where you mistakenly feel entirely responsible for someone else's happiness, completely abandoning your own needs in the process. Now, how do you actually know when a boundary is needed, especially if you're a beginner to all of this? Well, your own body is actually your absolute best clinical tool. We call this somatic anchoring. When someone makes a request of you, just slow down. Seriously, if you can, close your eyes and feel into your body for just a second. A sudden physical contraction, maybe a tightness in your chest or your stomach, or a quick wave of discomfort, that is an immediate biological indicator that your property line is being crossed. On the flip side, a feeling of opening or lightness, that means the request aligns with your current capacity. Let's look at the treatment side of things and how we actually frame our personal rules. I want to try a super quick psychological experiment with you. Ready? What happens if I tell you, do not think of a pink elephant? You immediately pictured one, right? Exactly. The human brain really struggles to process negative commands. And that little experiment brilliantly illustrates why so many of our boundaries fail right out of the gate. When we use negative, restrictive language like, I don't check my phone after 8 p.m., our brain just hyper-focuses on the phone. Instead, we absolutely must flip these restrictive don't roles into empowering I choose habits. Try rephrasing it to something like, I choose to connect with my partner after 8 p.m. By focusing on the gain and the abundance of the situation rather than the restriction, you completely transform a negative limit into a highly actionable positive habit. Now, to reinforce these empowering choices, we use tangible daily interventions. You can't just think about boundaries. You literally have to engineer them into your everyday environment. Set a vibrant alarm on your phone for 8 a.m. to start your focused work, or maybe 9:45 p.m. to signal your brain that it's time to prep for bed. You can even use physical markers, like physically changing your clothes at 6 p.m. That acts as a physical gate, transitioning you out of your work or your caretaker role and right back into your personal space. There is such a profound, vital connection between setting these personal limits and your overall psychological well-being. Maintaining these daily interventions actively fuels your emotional regulation. It drastically reduces your stress levels and directly prevents that emotional depletion we talked about earlier. Setting boundaries isn't just a neat communication tactic. It is literally the fundamental engine of your mental health. So how do we actually bring a boundary from our mind into the real world? We rely on a highly structured 3-step psychological framework. First, you identify the boundary. Second, you communicate your needs. And third, you follow up with action. You literally cannot skip a step here if you want that boundary to hold. Let's break that framework down a bit more. Step 1, you identify the need somatically, using those body sensations we just covered. Step 2, you speak the limit clearly, using a personal I statement. And step 3, which is incredibly critical, you take action by enforcing consequences. Because listen, a boundary without an enforced consequence is literally just a suggestion. When it comes to communicating these limits to others, you've got to keep it concise. Over-explaining just invites a debate. Here are some specific, highly effective scripts you can use to be kind, but incredibly firm. Try saying, evenly and calmly, I understand you are upset, but I need time to process my own emotions. Or, for a physical boundary, just a simple, I prefer a handshake instead of a hug. If someone tries to pile extra tasks onto your plate, just say, I can't take on extra work right now. And if they try to pull you into workplace gossip, use, I stay in my own lane and focus on me. These statements establish personal commitments rather than issuing demands to the other person. Section 5. Dealing with trespassers. Handling pushback and manipulators. Because, of course, setting a brand new boundary almost always causes side effects in the form of pushback. People who are used to having unrestricted access to your time and energy, they are not going to like the new fences you're putting up. As a mental health professional, I really must warn you to be especially vigilant with individuals exhibiting cluster B traits, like pathological narcissism. These individuals are often stuck in a psychological stage of growth where they view others merely as extensions of themselves, which means they inherently do not recognize personal boundaries. To them, your boundaries are simply frustrating obstacles, blocking their own control and self-gratification. They are going to try to trespass on your newly drawn property lines using a variety of pretty toxic tactics. You might see limit testing, where they deliberately probe your firmness just to see if you'll cave. They may demand excessive explanations, aggressively rationalizing why your boundary is unfair. Or they might hit you with the silent treatment to passively aggressively guilt-trap you right back into a pleasing stance. Recognizing these tactics for exactly what they are, manipulation is your absolute first line of defense. So the crucial point you have to remember is this. If you don't honor your boundaries, others won't either. It's that simple. When someone else gets upset because of your boundary, you do not need to change it, and you certainly do not need to over-explain it. You teach people how to treat you by showing them exactly how you treat yourself. When you hold the line firmly against manipulation and you let other people handle their own emotional reactions, you do something profoundly healing. You shift the responsibility entirely back to yourself. You stop trying to manage their feelings, and you start managing your own environment. This fundamentally restores your personal power and totally reclaims your agency. And look, when things get really difficult, the secret is to anchor your boundaries deeply into your core values. Whether your core value is family time, your mental peace, or your physical health, knowing your why is your strongest possible shield. When you know exactly why you are holding the line, it helps you comfortably weather any temporary discomfort or disappointment from others. Ultimately, establishing boundaries is the absolute highest form of self-care. By consistently honoring your own needs, stepping away from that caretaker role, and fiercely protecting your energy, you're doing so much more than just managing relationships. You are actively building an unshakable foundation of self-trust, which translates directly into long-term self-esteem. I want to leave you with this provocative thought to reflect on as you navigate your relationships today. What property line will you confidently draw to protect your own sanity and space? Remember, you are entirely worthy of the fences you built. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really encourage you start drawing those lines today. See you next time.